Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Inside Pitch. I am Ramesh Santanam, and I'm an administrator of this private Facebook group where screenwriters, creatives, and others meet to ask and answer questions and exchange ideas and information on the craft and business of movie making. This page was created by and is run by Christopher Lockhart, who is on vacation today, so it's just me. Chris and I administer this page with Steve Enlow. Today's interview is sponsored by Roadmap Writers, and we have a very special prize. One TIP member will win a free 1-hour consultation with an exec of their choice from a list of Roadmap Writers participating Hollywood execs. After our live session, one name will be chosen from group members who left a question or comment for today's guest in the chat. I will randomly and blindly pick a name and announce it on the page. I know there are many of you who are members on this page but don't participate often. Today is not the day to be shy. Ask your questions or comment and you will be eligible to win this prize. A big shout out and a bigger thank you to Roadmap Writers and Joy Tuccio for offering this prize and championing new talent. Okay, on to our guest. Our guest today is ZACH COX, a lit manager at Circle of Confusion. He's a Sierra Nevada loving Chico State graduate and Northern California native who's been at the management and production company Circle of Confusion for more than 16 years now. He started as an intern in the fall of 2006 and became a manager in the fall of 2020. Zach has an unquenchable thirst for character-driven stories regardless of genre and believes great storytelling is a gift that can be honed but not outright taught. If it were entirely teachable, he would be a writer and not a manager. Zach, welcome to the Inside Pitch, and thank you for doing this.
Appreciate you guys having me.
So again, let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved? How did you become a manager? How did you get into this business?
Yeah, so, it's referenced in the bio. Grew up in Northern California, went to a state school up in Northern California called Chico State. When I was at school, I had just made a random decision that I wanted to be a writer. And I didn't know what that meant. I just know I needed to be in LA. So I moved to LA. I got an internship at a couple places, but Circle was the one that I chose. And this was back during the days when you could get internships even though you were already graduated. You don't really see that anymore. If it's not for school credit, they pretty much don't give them anymore unless it's paid. This was unpaid. So anyways, started interning at Circle, and through that process, I was fortunate enough to be working lit managers as well as producers. We had two in-house producers at the time, and I was able to see how writers worked with their managers versus how they worked with producers. And the one thing that struck me most of all was how managers got to work with talented writers over and over again, right? For every project, the manager is somewhat involved from a developmental stage all the way through sales, et cetera. So that was just sort of an interesting thing. And then through that time, I realized that through working with writers and seeing a bunch of writers daily that I wasn't built like a writer. And I don't mean that qualitatively. I don't, that's subjective, right? Whether my writing was good or bad or whatever, I'm taking that off the table because that's in the eye of the beholder. What I mean by that is you're truly an artist when you're a writer, right? If you choose that life, you're accepting that there's going to be some bad years. It's going to be some good years, hopefully. And, it's a very hit or miss business. You're a private contractor, right? Like it is, it scared me, quite frankly. I'm somebody who likes to have something to do. I go a little bit stir crazy if there isn't, I literally keep a notebook next to me at all times. And if there aren't things to do, I kind of go a little bit crazy. So I saw all these different facets of the business and decided that because I will always have a storyteller heart, even if I'm not a writer, I felt like management was the best path for me because then I could work with writers that I know and love and respect throughout their entire career and not just one-offs here and there. And so that put me on a management path, and here we are.
Someone here asked, what made you want to become a manager, choose to become a lit manager and not an agent?
I personally, this isn't a blanket rule, but I personally, as a manager, and I think I can speak for a lot of other managers that I know at least, I work best when I'm the lead creative and the agent is the lead on sales. And that doesn't mean we don't want their notes. That doesn't mean I don't make phone calls to try to sell material as well or set it up with producers, studios, networks, what have you. I do, but I think it works best when there's a good separation of labor. And because of that, again, being the storyteller at heart that I am, management was far more attractive. Like, an agent typically is going to have twice as many clients as a manager or more. And it's because, again, they're not in the weeds the way that a manager is creatively, traditionally speaking. A lot of rules or roles, not rules, became a little fuzzy because of the ATA writer situation where the writers removed and their agents, they fired them until they signed the new contract or agreement. It kind of blurred the lines. We had to be both, right? We were the only agent on the team, so we had to do all the sales and we had to do all the creative. And I don't say that in a complaining way. It's not at all. It's just, it was what it was. But it did sort of change things a little bit. I think mostly in that we do a lot more sales than we did prior to whatever year that was, that 2018, 2019.
Yeah,
So
it was before the pandemic, right?
yeah, it was right before the pandemic.
Right.
It sort of blurred the lines a little bit, but basically, long story short, there's more creative being a manager. That's why.
Okay. Is it better for new writers to have a manager and an agent, or preferably begin with a manager and then sort of work their way to an agent?
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I personally think by the nature of what we do, we are more likely to find you, we being managers, early in your career. And if I were a young writer, I would look for a manager. But I also would say a lot of people, even after that, maybe they sell their first thing or maybe they get on the blacklist, whatever that first career win is. A lot of people ask me, like, do I need an agent? I look at it this way. You're eventually going to start an LLC, right? That's what writers do once they start making a certain amount of money, right? So now you own a company. You're running a company. I would have as many people working for me as possible as long as I thought they were bringing their weight, carrying their weight and bringing their 10%, right? So if you look at your career and you go, is my lawyer worth this 10% or 5%, excuse me, is my agent worth 10, is my manager worth 10? There's a lot of ways to look at that. You could look at it as, did they book me a job? You could look at it as how much time do they spend on me with the phone when I'm on the phone when I'm spun out because I got some bad notes. Teach their own, right? But I just look at it as you're running a business. You should have as many people that are dedicated to the same causes that you are and the same goals working for you as possible. And if you feel like one of those people isn't carrying their weight, just like you would if you ran a target, you would fire that person, right? So that's the way I look at it.
Okay, good. Let's talk about the writer's strike that's going on right now, and how is it affecting you at all? How do you think how do you think the strike is going to affect new writers once the strike is over? Will you be inundated with your client scripts so you won't have time to read new writers, or
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I actually don't have much time to read new writers right now, and a lot of people, I get a lot of query letters.
Right.
People are like, I know it's a downtime, and so I'm hoping you have more time. No, because yes, I'm not talking to my writers as much right now because they are rightfully so committed to walking the picket lines and doing the things necessary to fight this fight on the writers' behalf. And I fully support that. I have, going back to 2019 when we thought 2020 was going to be the strike year, and then COVID happened. They didn't strike, obviously, but we were fully expecting it to happen then because, I don't want to get into it too much, but there's a lot of great articles about how the streaming model changed TV. Just go read that. Read some of those articles. There's one on Decoder. There's one on Vulture. They're great, and they do a great job explaining what the fight's all about. But that aside, I have to make a living still, right? And I can't book any new work right now, and totally get that. And again, support the cause. But then I need to spend this time that I would normally been spending doing notes and developing new content and taking it out to buyers and streamers, doing something to make myself a better manager to my clients when this resolves and there is a new contract in place, right? So I could just sit around and bemoan how sad I am and how frustrating it is. And sure, like we all feel it. Everybody feels that. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're part of this business, you feel the writer's strike. So rather than just sit around and bitch about it, I'm trying to take it as an opportunity to build new parts of my career, right? That will help my clients. My career is representation of clients. So by me building new facets to my business, that's only going to help them. And so what do I mean by that? Okay, one, I'm meeting a lot more people in international TV, right? This business is becoming more and more international. And I'm not trying to sell these people anything and like skirt because they're not WGA. I'm not sending them anything except for like IP, comic books, short stories, this sort of stuff. I'm not sending them any writers, even non-WGA writers. But I am building those relationships because I know, I assume, I guess I don't know, I'm not clairvoyant, but I assume this business is going to be 4 or 5 streamers, whoever wins after all the mergers and acquisitions are done, and they're going to be everywhere. So when I was a kid, right, still today, I could turn on ABC, CBS, Fox here. I can go up to Canada and turn on CBC. I can go to UK and turn on BBC, et cetera, right? TF1 in France, whatever. I think all those countries are just going to have the same selections, right? So it's all going to be Netflix, Apple, whatever. I'm just, whoever wins, I don't really know. But I just would bet on the tech companies because they're more deep pocketed, right? So maybe it's Netflix, Apple, Amazon, whoever. And then every country will have that. So I need to be ahead of that curve and not wait till it happens and then go, oh shit, I need to learn the international game, right? No, I'm going to get ahead of it. The other thing, unscripted. A lot of writers have unscripted ideas. That could be docuseries, that could be a game show, that could be, the next Love Island, whatever it is, right? I have clients who want to know about that stuff, and rather than have to kick that over to somebody who knows the space, because I don't, I better learn that space. So I'm meeting a lot more people in docuseries and documentary films, this sort of thing. And then, there's just like maybe people who I fell out of touch with. This would be the third component of what I'm doing, who, for whatever reason, we haven't had a lunch in a few years, COVID, whatever. Going to meet them and just saying like, what do you think this is going to look like when the strike's all said and done? And what are you going to be looking for from writers? I know they're all looking for IP because that's all they can do right now. So that's a given. But yeah, it's just really trying to be ahead of it because I know whether it goes on for however, 1 month, 6 months, I don't know. But whenever it ends, I need to be in a position to not be chasing the rest of the pack. So yeah, I'm not any less busy than I was before.
Okay.
Quite the opposite.
Yeah. How do you go about getting your clients? Is it through queries? Is it through referrals?
Yeah, all the above. I would say the easy way to answer this is how I tier my reading, my Kindle or my Chromebook that's right next to me right here. I tier it by referrals first, but not just all referrals from writers. So like a client of mine says, hey, I just read this writer, you got to check him out. Oh my God, okay. That goes to the top of the pile because nobody's harder on writers than other writers, right? Like artists judge other artists more than anybody else because they're also artists. So that I put client referrals first. I put referrals from agents, producers, studio executives, this sort of thing second, and then queries third. And then fourth is just like pleasure reading. Like maybe there's a big spec sale or a piece of IP that's sold. Like I remember when Joe Hill sold Fawn. I was going after it for a client, and so I should probably check it out, right? So that's like the fourth tier of reading. Yeah, but client, what's the obvious being client stuff first. But yeah, when it comes to new clients, that's how I tier it.
Okay. What do you look for in a query when you do get a query from a new writer?
Good question.
Like how short should it be? How long should it be? What information do you want in there?
Short. Writing a good log line is a really good key. Thanks. Okay. Sorry, my friend brought me a green tea. Okay. Shorter the better. If you can't encapsulate your story into a log line, then how do you expect me to pitch it, right? So if I get on the phone and I'm calling producer X, Y, Z, how am I pitching this project, right? I'm not going to be able to pitch them a paragraph. They're going to hang up on me. I'm taking 100 phone calls a day. They don't want me on the phone with them forever. So like log lines are not just the thing that goes on like, your TV to tell you what the movie or TV show is about. It's how we pitch. So it could be the elevator pitch, this meets this. I don't prefer that. I prefer a real log line. I prefer a real, here's a solid sentence that tells me what your protagonist is doing in what world? So there's an art to it. But yeah, I found that I'm sure there's some website out there that people use, because I found that there's like a formatted query email that comes to me a lot. And that one, whoever's doing that one is doing a good job, because at the beginning is the title, then it's the log line, then there's any like accolades that the writer may have won, or previous successes, top 15% finishes in this thing or that thing. That to me is the best. Whoever's doing that, keep following that format. It works for me.
But you don't want them to attach anything, right?
No.
Okay.
Well, first of all, that's a legal conundrum. We have a release form. Like if I request a query, we have a legal release form that we have to have signed, because we had somebody come after us and try to sue us for stealing, quote unquote, their idea of a script that was never actually even sent to us.
Okay.
It was a query letter that somebody sent. I don't even remember which client it was, honestly. I'm not even being coy. This was like 20 years ago, 17 years ago, something like that. But somebody tried to sue us for a client like came out with a project that had a similar idea. And we were like, I don't even think anybody read their letter. But we try to, because of that incident, so we've always had an open query system at Circle of Confusion, which is very different than most representation companies, right? It's very unusual, especially for an A-list management company. And that goes back to the fact that our founding partner found the Wachowskis off of a query letter, like a physical letter that was mailed to Lawrence Mattis, is his name. So we pride ourselves on being one of the few representation companies of note that has an open query system, but somebody tried to take advantage of that. So we have to be very cautious now about it. So we have a queries at Circle of Confusion email that you're more welcome, anybody can send to. A lot of people just send me stuff directly, again, through some email blast that that somebody's probably paying for, but yeah, that's what that's how we do it. There's a release form. So yeah, don't send me a script, because I'll immediately delete the email. Well, I'll file it and then delete it, because I can't. At that point, my bosses would kill me.
Are you okay with, let's say a writer has written a short film and it has been made, or he wrote and directed it, if they send you a link to it in the query, is that okay?
Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay.
You it's rare you get the short form query or short film query. I'll be very honest. It's usually screenplays, and that's fine. No complaints. But yeah, send me a link to a short. I'm psyched.
Okay. You mentioned contests. What contests do you pay attention to? And
I mean, Nichols is obvious, right? Like everybody, Nichols is the big one. Then there's like, oh, what's the one fly? Something fly. There's like Screencraft. There's the Final Draft one. I love the Final Draft one. I think, is that Screencraft? I never, or Final Draft Big Break or something like that. Anyway, Final Draft great. The film festival ones, like awesome. Like I placed at the Awesome Film Festival. That's great. I just got invited to judge for Austin. I don't know if it'll work out. But yeah, anything that's associated with film festival, or any of the more major companies like a Final Draft, or like, I mean, if you guys did one, I would take it, or, if Joey did one, like I would take that very serious, because I know those people, but it's got to be from some entity that I know, not fly by night. I've never heard of it. Like that doesn't do anything. I don't know how many people enter it. I don't know who's vetting it. I don't know who's judging it. If it's something where I can go to a website and look at who judged it and it's a bunch of my peers, great. That one.
Okay. Yeah, and there are a lot of screenwriting contests.
There's a million of them.
Right, and it's sort of tough to.
I could start one tomorrow and just make a bunch of money off aspiring screenwriters, and I've refused to do that, because I think it's disgusting. But I see people do that all the time, because they think, oh, if I enter this contest and I win, then that's going to be a thing that I get to put, a laurel or an accolade that I put in my email. Great on paper, but I've never heard of the contest. You just wasted your money. So I find that there's a lot of people preying on people like that, and I hate it. So, just being honest.
You'd mentioned the importance of a log line. Can you talk a little bit about that? And also, could you say, like, what are the mistakes you see when people query you with log lines in the log line?
Yeah. I mean, it's super important again because that directly becomes we'll amend it to some degree, but like that becomes our pitch, right? Like that's the pitch we use. So I have a client who wrote this killer script many years ago and took it out, and the log line was a troop of Girl Scouts run their cookie selling operation like a high level drug cartel, and then there was like this meets Breaking Bad kind of, South Park meets Breaking Bad or something. I don't remember what the elevator pitch was. You know exactly what that is, right? You not only know the literal Girl Scouts selling cookies like a drug cartel, right? You're already like, okay, that's humorous, right? You just know, like, there's no way to play that straight. I mean, you could, but nobody's buying that, right? You
Right.
could play that like Scarface with 9-year-olds, but that will not sell. I promise you. So you kind of already know as a buyer, as a producer, as a manager, you kind of already know what you're getting yourself into. And I remember it was the funny thing, that client had asked to borrow. I'm a big fan of Godfather and Scarface and Goodfellas and stuff. I grew up on that stuff. And client asked me to borrow these films. And I was like, sure, yeah, okay. She's a known comedy writer. She's great. And she came back with this script. And I was like, oh, now it makes sense why you asked to borrow those films, because I never would have pegged you for that type of content. So yeah, and again, you know exactly what that is from that log line. And then, so the mistakes are when people try to get too long-winded. It's like, it's about a guy who goes to do this thing, and then he meets a woman, and then this thing, it's just like, guy in peril in Antarctica, got it, right? Like, I don't need all the flowery extra stuff, because it's not gonna, like, don't try to give me a synopsis in your log line. Give me a log line. Tell me how you would pitch this in 10 seconds to a studio executive. That's it. If you should be so lucky to go sit down with the president of production and pick your favorite studio, Sean Bailey at Disney, what are you going to tell him? He's not going to give you 20 minutes. So,
Okay. When you get the queries you get, of the queries you get, how many do you, after reading them, do you say, like, okay, I want to read this?
it's not a high percentage, but it's because I get a lot.
Okay.
Every day it could be anywhere from half a dozen to over a dozen. So
Okay.
just think about logically, like how many hours I have in a day to work for my clients.
Right.
So, and then like I told you, the tiered system, but I do read them when I love a log line. I probably requested 2 in the last 2 weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, the percentage isn't high, but I probably read more queries than most people at my, like I say, levels. I'm not above anybody, but like my tenure, like I've been doing this a long time. So I have a lot of people who are working writers. So the amount of room I have on my roster is very small. But I still read them because I believe in it. I've seen it work, right? Like I've only probably ever signed 2 people off of a query. But again, the Wachowskis, there was the movie Hannah that became the TV show
Right.
Hannah.
Right.
That was a query that I saw. Like I was there when they sold it. I wasn't there when they read the query, but I came in to be an intern right when they were taking it out to the marketplace, and they sold it and it got made. Helped make Saoirse Ronan's career is it's great.
Okay. And when you get a script of a query and you start reading it,
Yeah.
what is, like, at what point, like, how many pages do you give it before you sort of say, okay?
Yeah. Everybody knows it's like 10 or 15 pages rule or
Right.
whatever. It's not a rule to me. I just read until I don't want to read anymore. That could be 2 pages. That could be 15 pages. That could be 100. I could get all the way to the end and love it. I could get halfway through and be like, this just fell apart. And I try to teach the people underneath me, like assistants and interns, when they ask for my advice. I don't I don't corner them and tell them this, but if they ask, I say just read until you don't want to read anymore. Because when I get a query, if it's sellable, that's icing on the cake. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for voice, right? Like I'm a manager. This is not a one-off. I'm not looking for one singular project. I'm looking for a voice from a writer that I can then build a career for. So if it's sellable, dope. But that's not even my first consideration. Probably like my third. It's like voice and structure, then sellability.
Okay. And how quickly, when you're reading a script, do you see the voice?
very quickly.
Okay.
Because voice is in everything, right? It's more prevalent, it's more obvious in dialogue and what your characters are actually doing. When they zig, when I think they're going to zag, making bold choices with your characters. But I mean, some people like, break the fourth wall in their scene description, stuff like that. That could go bad. That's not like doing that inherently doesn't make you a good writer. That could go horribly wrong. That could make it way too verbose when you could have done it in one sentence, right? It's the ability to just get across your point very quickly, right? Like, 'cause there's this old kind of I don't know, slang that we use, right? There's too much black on the page, and that just it's too much ink. It's too much scene description. I was like, a lot of young writers fall into the trap of writing a screenplay like it's a novel, right? Like it's prose. It's not prose. It's not, right? Like it is it's almost like an architectural blueprint for a movie or a pilot. It's not prose. It's not like, there's some amazing screenplays and amazing writers, but even they would tell you like prose is a completely different, game. So, but you find that a writer wants to convey every little thing, to put every little thing in your brain. But the truth is, you can often accomplish a lot more with a lot less, because you may have visually painted a beautiful tableau by putting zero dialogue on your first 2 pages. I know exactly what I'm looking at, how vibrant it is. What the hell are your characters doing? Where are they? What's happening? What's the tone of this movie? I don't even know, because you just spent 2 pages telling me what it looked like with no other context. It's not a good move. It's a terrible move.
Okay. Are there two questions? Are there any genres you prefer, and are there any particular genres right now that are sort of popular, that are hot, that managers are looking for, that you're looking for?
I'm sure some managers are like that, and whatever the trend. I don't chase trends, because the trends always change. By the time you chase it, you're behind. I just don't believe in it. Like, if you love as a writer to write found footage horror, and you're like, well, shit, they don't make found footage horror anymore. They will. It's just the cyclical nature of this business. And also, if you write an excellent screenplay, maybe you're the first turn back towards paranormal activity, or Blumhouse loves it and goes, love it, let's change it to not found footage. And you go, all right. Because again, like your set pieces, your characters, your arcs, those exist no matter what the device is, right? So you saw in the bio, or you heard in the bio, I just like character driven. I really, people hate that it's not more specific than that, but it's the truth, because I can love a horror movie just as much as a comedy, just as much as a drama, just as much as a monster movie. Like I really don't. Like, my taste is varied. I can tell you the one thing, I'm going to reverse the answer to what I don't like, because what I like is so diverse, it's impossible to pin. I can't, I don't do well with big world creating sci-fi. I say this all the time. If you had handed me Star Wars back, I was alive when it came out. If I had been alive when it came out and you handed me the screenplay and I was the manager, just like everybody else in town who passed on it, I would have been like, I don't get it. But I love Star Wars. One of my favorite movies of all time is Return of the Jedi. When I was a little kid, my mom would be like, can we watch anything else? And then I'd be like, yeah. I'd be like, yes, Ewoks. She'd be like, oh, Battle for Endor, right? So yeah, it's so much world building. Again, it goes back to what I said about like so much black on the page that has nothing to do with characters. But obviously when George Lucas executed it, he knew what it would look like. But to convey that vision on the page is very difficult. People obviously eventually understood it, and gave him the money and the support to get it made. But it goes over my, he's like, aliens, and you have to explain their race and what they are in the world and what they look like and what color they are and how many tendrils and all this stuff. It's like my eyes start to glaze over personally, but that's just a taste thing. Doesn't mean you're a bad writer. It's just I'm not the one for that.
Do you prefer the writers, your clients, to sort of brand themselves, like, either write horror or be action writers or thriller writers, or or do you like them to sort of dabble in all genres?
Up to the writer. A lot of
Okay.
writers have this fear that they're going to be pigeonholed. The
Right.
beautiful thing about being a writer is you get to sit down a final draft and bang out a screenplay without somebody having to pay you, right? Like, and if you hope to get paid eventually, right? But the point being, like, if you're a director, you need somebody to give you millions of dollars to go make a movie, right? The great thing about being a writer is nobody can tell you what to write, right? So, but a lot of writers have this fear of like, I'm going to get pigeonholed. And I always go, first of all, getting pigeonholed is a good thing because that means you're an incoming call business, right? Whenever we break clients, we're trying to make you a known entity, a name that if I say your name, everybody knows who you are just off top, right? To the point where now you're so successful that people call me and go, hey, what's so-and-so up to? And I go, oh, well, it just so happens they have an open slot or they're triple booked or whatever, right? That's a good thing. Embrace that. And then write yourself out of it, right? Nobody's gonna be like, oh, so and so who writes great horror wrote a monster or like an action, comedy. I'm not gonna read that. They're a horror writer. No, it doesn't work like that. They just think you're a great writer. They know you for that thing, but they think of you as a great writer for that thing. So now all you have to do is convince them that you're a great writer for another thing, and they're gonna be excited, right? Like if Nora Ephron suddenly wrote, back in the day, the sequel to Evil Dead, people would have been like, what the hell does that look like? They would have been interested though, right? They wouldn't have been like, no, Nora, stay in your lane. They would have been like,
Right.
what is that? Sam Raimi and Nora Ephron? Give it to me. Let's go. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, people shouldn't worry so much about it. I get this question tons from a young writer. Well, if I write another horror thing, am I going to get pigeonholed? And I'm like, we should be so lucky that you get pigeonholed because I know people know you.
Here, question. When you love an initial script from a writer, how do you develop the relationship from there to assess their qualities? And how do some writers screw up in that initial phase?
You mean like I've read something I like and then I meet them?
Right. And then,
oh, go ahead. What is it?
yeah, no, that was it. Yes.
Okay. There's a few things. My biggest pet peeve is when people read Deadline and then they think they know the business because they read Deadline. You should read Deadline. Deadline's great, and it does give you great information about the business. Not disqualifying that. You should read The Reporter. You should read Variety. It's great. It's great. But you don't talk to execs every single day and hear no, right? I always joke, I hear no for a living. Do you know how many times I hear no in a week? It's insane. But it makes the yeses that much sweeter, right? Again, if this was easy, we'd all live in the mansions and the hills or whatever.
Right.
We don't. Most of us, even a lot of us who are successful, we just have a very basic life. It's not that fancy. Maybe it was back in the day, but not since I've been in the business. And of course, there's the people who hit it big, whatever. That's not most of us. So we just grind and we work hard. And so when you come to me and you read an article on Deadline and I tell you my opinion about your career trajectory and what I think we should do, you're more than welcome to disagree and choose somebody else who's more in line with your goals or your ethos or whatever it is. Totally get it. But there's always a way to be a contrarian, right? If I say I think this is the best move because this is the info that I get every day and that my fellow 20 some odd managers get every day, like I'm not pulling this out of air, I'm pulling this out of experience, not just my experience, but experience of very talented managers and partners who are also managers in this business. So when I tell you something, you can disagree, but don't go like, well, what about this on Deadline? Because I'm gonna be like, what about it? Like, yeah, they did something and maybe they broke the mold and maybe they zigged when everybody zagged and it worked for them. And that's great. I'm gonna applaud it. Every project that sells, unless that person has harmed me or a client in some way, I'm happy. I'm ecstatic. But I'm also just gonna do things the best way that I know how. And you have no context for how that thing happened. Like a lot of times when people are being contrarians about this, they don't actually know why it went against the grain. They don't know why a studio took a chance on this thing that seemingly shouldn't have sold, right? Because of whatever reason. It's too crazy, it's too left and center, whatever. They have no context. They're just like, well, that sold. And there's this like idea that it's like, I'm gonna break some hearts when I say this. This is not a meritocracy. Your great screenplay does not build you a business. This is a business, right? So you can write the best screenplay ever, but if there's not a marketability to it, Like if studios don't think they can put butts in seats, it's not going to sell. Straight up. So, there is a business element to it. So don't just go like, oh, it was good, that's why it sold. Yes, it had to have a certain level of quality. I'm not saying it's not good, but I'm saying there's a lot more consideration. So when somebody thinks they know the business better than me, it's very annoying. I'm happy to have a conversation, but don't like tell me I'm wrong, right? That's where you've crossed the line, because there is no wrong. Then some people just have outlandish goals that I try to temper. And then if they're just like, yeah, no, I hear you, but I want to win an Oscar by next year. Then I'm like, okay, I'm not the one for you, because there is no way I could deliver on that goal. It could happen, but for me to be like, yep, I'm the one, I'll make you win an Oscar next year, I'm just lying to your face to get you to be my client. Like, I won't do that. And by the way, most of my peers would not do that. But there are people who would just be like, I want to sign this person, so I'll promise the moon and hope that something happens. Then the last thing is just like, listen, this is a person-to-person business. If you're rude or awkward's fine, because like you can, one of my mentors used to send clients to acting class like if they were very awkward or they weren't well-spoken when it came to being in the room, they'd get very nervous and like shut down. They would send them to like improv classes and acting classes. I've never done that, but I do work with clients if I think they're a little awkward, but there are like, there's just decorum. And if I feel like I remember one time I took a meeting with a guy who smelled like he just smoked a full pack of cigarettes right before the meeting. I can't put that in a room. I can't. Like, that's your reputation, which means it's my reputation, because they're intertwined. I can't send you into a high level meeting with you smelling like that. Just gonna go bad. So yeah, those are the main things. But it's just personality fit, right? Like if we're gonna work together, I want to work with you your entire career, and so that's a lot of years, right? I'm not that old. We're gonna be doing this for a few decades, so we gotta like each other a little bit.
Do most of your clients feature writers, TV writers, or a good blend of both?
Yeah, good blend of both these days. You can't really bifurcate that way. Like when I was coming up, pardon me one second. I'm getting, as Ramesh knows, I'm getting over something. You can't really just work in features anymore. You can if you're like huge name, but like how many of us have the biggest names in the business, right? There's only so many people. Like just look at your average, movie at the major studios, and you'll see a lot of names repeating, right? Great writers like Simon Kimber or Billy Ray or Kiva or whatever, Kiva Goldsman, and that's great. But like most people, and even they want to work in TV also, just as creators because it's a different medium. But they could sustain an entire career only working in features. Most people can't do that. Most people just need to work in various mediums to procure a living, and most people want to. Again, they're artists. They don't want to feel constrained by one storytelling medium. I want to write a half-hour pilot that's comedic. I want to write an hour drama, or I want to write a light hour, or I want to write a movie, or I want to write a book, or whatever. We encourage that. You're an artist. Like we should be able to service you as a writer in all mediums. So yeah, I came up just knowing features. When I was first promoted, I didn't know anything about TV. And then good friend / mentor who used to work at Circle and then started his own management company taught me. I would just pick his brain when he didn't have a lunch and I didn't have a lunch. We'd go get turkey burgers from a place down the street, and I would just ask him, how's it work? How's it different than features? How's it similar in features? And he taught me everything. And it's good because then a couple years later, it was the cable boom, then it was the streaming boom, and I would have been left in the dust if I didn't pick his brain. So yeah, you should do everything.
For up and coming writers, aspiring writers, do you who are writing television, do you recommend they continue writing specs for existing shows or concentrate more on original pilots?
Original. It's very rare these days that a spec of an existing show gets any notoriety. It's rare that I would even send it because nobody will ask for it. Like it used to be the norm back in the day. those days are gone. The exceptions being like sometimes people will, there's this great script, nice guy, who I met with and really like funny, hilarious kid who wrote a Seinfeld episode of 9/11.
I remember that one. Yeah.
You remember that one? Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to omit names. You guys can all Google this stuff. I'm trying to omit names because I don't know if they would want me to say their name. So I'm trying to be respectful. But yeah, great guy, hilarious script. That can work, right? Because you didn't write an actual science, like they would have never done that episode, right? But if they had, here's what it would look like. That'll get you attention. There was a South Park one that got a bunch of attention. So you'll see stuff like that from time to time. And then every now and again, very rarely, maybe once or twice a year, I'll hear somebody be like, and if they have a spec of an existing show, I would read that. But it's not like, yeah, I need a spec of our show, or they're not getting on Law and Order or whatever. It's not how it works anymore.
And for writers, do you want to read anything more than the pilot? When someone submits an original idea for a TV show, do you want them to write more than the pilot? Do you just
like a
want
Bible or a backup episode?
Right, or
like
even
that?
more episodes?
No, it's unnecessary. I mean, if anything, I'd say a series document, which meaning like how you would pitch the series.
Okay.
A lot of great documents online of it's like the why are you the person telling the story? Why now? Why is the story relevant now? And who is this for? Like why there's an audience, right?
Yeah.
If you have something like that, or even like a loose document about where the show would go, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I take that, but I don't need backup scripts.
Okay. How important are pitch decks, or are they?
Pretty important.
Okay.
I've had writers or directors who are maybe like taking a big swing, right? Like they wouldn't traditionally be in this room for whatever reason. They're a little bit greener. Maybe they don't have the credits to support being in this pitch, but they put together the best pitch deck and they get the job, right? Like I've seen it. I've seen pitches where somebody maybe went out and filmed with their friends, like a scene of what the movie would be. And these aren't like even necessarily like big time actors or anything. This is just like somebody with their friends, but they cut it together to give you a sense of the mood. And a lot of people do sizzle reels where they take existing footage of seminal films or well-known films and they cut it together, a trailer with their own voiceover or whatever. That kind of stuff is, yeah. I mean, I say this all the time, and if I don't give context, it sounds mean, but like the less an executive has to use their imagination, the better. And I don't mean that executives don't have imaginations. Of course they do. Some of my best friends are very creative executives in this business, but they have so much stuff being thrown in their face every day. Our whole job, and that means you too. Like when I say I'm always talking about the greater team of a writer, and the most important person in that team is the writer. So when I say our job, I'm saying the writer, the agent, the manager, the lawyer, everybody, is to make you stand out in the business, right? And so if you're the average CE in this business and you take, a few hundred meetings a year with some established, some up and coming writers, they're not going to remember 400 writers in 2 years and directors. They're just not. So how do you stand out? Starts with what's on the page. That's how you got in the room in the first place. Then what? Do you find a connection with them? Do you have an interesting story? Did you send them an interesting sizzle reel? It's like it's all of that. So anything you could do to stand out from the crowd, I'm fully supportive of it.
So when you read a script, what makes you go wow? Like, yeah,
it's the voice. It's the thing that you can't describe. Like if I could describe it, I would be a writer. I say that as a joke in the bio, but it's the truth. It's voice, and it's just who you are as a writer comes through on the page. There is no way to describe voice other than to say, I could send you 5 screenplays, and you will know the one who's a working screenwriter because of their characters, the strength of the characters, the ability to make you feel something when you're reading it. If you can emote while reading a script, that's pretty hard to do, right? Like, again, a script is not prose. So I don't get into characters. Like, it's like if you read Hunger Games is all in Katniss's head, right? You can't do that in a screenplay. How are you going to do that? You're going to write, and Katniss sat there and thought blank. I'm going to put that script down immediately. You have to show me, not tell me. And so somebody who can show me, not tell me with brevity and make me feel something, that's a great writer. And again, I can't teach you that. Otherwise, I wouldn't teach you that. I would take it for myself. I think it's like sport. I think it's like sports. Michael Jordan is 6'6", 210, 215 pounds or whatever. He's the greatest basketball player of all time, right? There's a lot of people that were 6'6", 215 pounds in the NBA. Why aren't they the greatest player of all time? It was talent, but it was also really hard work. That's what makes a great writer. An inherent talent that you work really hard at. That's it.
Do you also work with writers who don't live in the States?
Totally. Absolutely. Okay. This goes back to what I was saying about international TV becoming something that if you're ignoring it, you're ignoring the future. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I've been meeting all these companies, some in India, some in Latin America, some in Korea, Taiwan. I met with a South African company. Great storytelling is great storytelling. I don't care where it comes from.
Do you ever reconsider a pitch you passed on because the timing is now better?
No, because again, I'm not looking to sell something in the moment. I'm looking to build a writer's career. So if I'm passing on something, I'm not a producer, right? Like if I was a producer, that would be different. Then I'd be like, oh, well, we're not looking for horror right now. And then all of a sudden we're looking for horror and I might go back to something, but that's not my job. I'm looking for a writer who I can build a career for. So I don't like get pitches and pass on them. I get writers with ideas and scripts, and then I either think I'm the right person for the job or not. It's a different, that question is not applicable to me really.
And when you get a query from a writer, you read the script, you like it, how important is it to you that they have, the what else do you have question?
It's fairly important. It wouldn't prevent me from signing somebody if I love the material that much if they didn't have other content, right? Like if they're just the unicorn who wrote their first screenplay and it's the best thing ever and they don't have anything else. I know they're lying. They have other stuff. They just don't want to share it. But if they are that unicorn, I got to go with my gut, but I would prefer to see consistency of voice. Because that's the biggest fear, right? As a writer and as a manager, we're again, your success is my success. So if I take this project out and it sells and it gets a bunch of attention and you're the new hot writer in town, and then your next script, people are like, oh, what happened? That's bad for us. That's bad for everybody involved. That is bad business. But you don't know. You don't know, right? So you go on faith. You go on your ability to judge the voice on the page. And again, that's entirely subjective. Like I have colleagues who only want to rep genre writers. I love genre, but I don't only rep genre writers, right? Like I don't have a niche like that. But maybe if you had a niche like that, it might be different. But yeah, I'm always concerned that that's the fear. It's like you got to keep delivering. It's not like you did it once and now you're in the game and now you can just get a bunch of paychecks. It's not. You got to keep delivering at a high level. So, you keep working at your craft, and that's writers, but that's also me as a manager.
One issue that comes up on our page often is ageism and older writers. And, do you have clients who are older?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that a consideration at all when you read something, you really like it? And
it depends on their expectations. Okay. There is ageism in the business. Like, I'm not going to look somebody in their eye and be like, yeah, you're 65, you're going to be the new hot writer at the studios. I don't know. I wouldn't promise that because there is ageism in the business, right? I'm not ignorant. But I would say that you see stuff sell from older people all the time. Like that's not unusual to set up. And that could be a script, that could be IP. The thing is you're gonna have to get paired. This doesn't matter if you're 22 or 62. Let's say you sell a pilot. You're not the showrunner, right? Like there's this misnomer in this business from aspiring writers a lot of times that the showrunner is just the head writer. You're the head producer. So no studio is going to give you $20 million to make 10 episodes because you're the best writer. They don't, you're going to be paired with a showrunner 99 out of 100 times because they're going to be like, well, we have to make sure this person delivers on time, on budget, knows how to work with studio notes, knows how to work with network notes. Can, if it's broadcast, you got to worry about standards and practices, S&P. Like, they're not going to let a rookie do that, right? And again, that doesn't matter what your age is. But there is, like, you're going to find, like, okay, it can take 15 years to go from staff writer to, it's part of what the strike is about, frankly, to showrunner. So that becomes a consideration for some people sometimes, right? Like, are you really in this for the next 15 years just to work your way up the ladder? And again, but I personally don't care at all. I'm like, great material and a great voice. I'm going to take my bets because it's so hard to find that. It's so rare to find that for me personally. I'm very picky that I'm not going to be like, well, this checked all the boxes, but I talked to the writer and they're older. No, don't care. But again, you will encounter it. It's a real thing. It's a real thing in life.
That's true.
Like if me and a 55-year-old go apply to Target, I'm going to get the job probably.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I don't personally care. This is art. We're selling art here. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, we're not curing any inoperable brain tumors or stuff. Like, it's just, what we do is kind of silly. We sell stories.
When you get a script from a writer sends you the script, new writer, he queried you, you liked it, you liked the query, you ask for the script, they send it to you. How long should they wait to follow up?
I'm big on people following up with me because I have so much to read. And you saw my Kindle, your head would explode. It's absurd how much I have to read. So I actually love follow-ups. I would say the first one shouldn't come any sooner than 2 weeks. 2 weeks is kind of the industry standard for follow-ups. That's us too. If I send a script, I'm not following up for 2 weeks. So that's just what we go by for whatever reason. But I don't really adhere to, like, after that first follow-up and the person's like, sorry, I haven't got to it. I don't have a set rule. It's case by case for me. But reminding me that I owe you a read on a Friday is great because that's when I'm putting my weekend read list together. So I don't know. I can't speak for everybody, but that's kind of my preference.
How many scripts do you read over a weekend?
It depends on the weekend. Yeah, because look, I'm married with kids, right? Like, it's not every weekend. It's just me holed up in the house reading. But I do tend to, even when the family's here, most Saturdays is just family. Friday night, family. And then Sunday, usually afternoon around 4 or 5, I'll lock myself in my room and just read until I pass out. That could be midnight, 2 a.m, whatever. And then we read at night during the week too. I think there's a lot of people who think we read during the day. There's no way I can find you work if I read during the day, right? And the main thing here is for you to be able to make a living at this, not just write and send it off into the ether and then never get a dollar. We can't live off of that. So we do most of our reading at night and on weekends. And so I think that's the biggest challenge with this job is juggling weekends with, your family versus your career. And so, that's why I said I wasn't built like a writer, right? Like, I would work all day. I would go home and I would just want to crack open a beer and watch a ball game, right? Whatever sport was in season I'm watching. And so if you're a writer, though, you write because you have to. Like, you're an artist. Like, you have to get it out, right? You're a painter, you paint. If you're a writer, you write, whatever. And if you're not committed on that level, you're never going to make it. So I realized that about myself and said, all right, I'm gonna bow out and find a different path. And so that was my path.
We have a question. If I'm a feature writer, but you want me to write for TV and I have no interest in TV, does that make me a bad client?
No, but we're going to have a conversation about your cap. Like, you are capping your opportunities. So I'm going to tell you, if you accept that you're capping your opportunities, right? Just don't take my word for it, right? Like, I mean, do, but because I do this for a living, but like look in how many movies come out a year that are major motion pictures? Not counting indie films. How many major motion pictures at the major studios go into theaters every year? It's not as much as it used to be, right? There's a really high concentration in the summer and the fall. And then there's these key weekends throughout the course of the calendar year, right? That's how you make real money, being a feature writer. You can write indie films, but I can tell you right now, I've had many clients who made off of, let's say, a $2 million movie. They made $50,000 pre-tax, pre-commission, and they probably put some of their own money back into the film to make sure it was the best film possible. You have clients in indie film who defer payments. They say, I'm not taking $1 until the film's in profit. Then it never goes into profit. There is not a lot of money to be made in indie film. And I love indie film. I've got many made. Some of my proudest, probably my proudest career achievements are getting these little tiny movies that nobody thought we could get made. I love it. I find it is a badge of honor for me. So it boosts my ego, but it does not make you a career. $50,000 before tax and commission, and that's on a good paid under $2 million under movie.
Okay. What are some do's and don'ts for a writer when engaging with a manager, and what should writers be aware of when they're signing with a manager?
The don'ts was just what I detailed earlier about what makes a bad, why I wouldn't sign a client after I read something like it and met them. So I won't go through all that again, but just, make it clear that you're as committed to this as they are. I tell all my clients, again, I'm going to repeat this because it's the most important thing I can say to a client or an aspiring writer. You're the most important part of the team. Nobody loves your writing more than you. We love it. We're committed. We're going to send it to everybody and try to make you a living. But nobody's a bigger advocate for you than you. So be part of the team. Meet other writers. Go to WGA events. Go, apply for programs of like show running training programs and all this stuff. All of my clients would tell you I'm the biggest proponent of do drinks, do lunches, do all the general meetings in the beginning of your career. You can get to a point where you can be more picky and choosy about the general meetings, but I can't tell you how many times a client called and was like, why am I taking this meeting? And then it came back and it helped them. Sometimes it's just somebody who gave us a piece of advice. There was one time literally the person put money into a movie to finance it. And then initially the client was very dubious about the meeting, and I totally understood why, but we talked about it and the client was like, all right, I get it. We had no idea it would pay off in a film actually getting made, but it did. So yeah, be committed to busting your ass, not just at writing. There's too many people who just write, send it to their managers and agents and go like, okay, go do your thing. Yes, we will do our thing, but then you're leaving opportunities on the playing field. Like, don't leave points on the field. Like, go get it.
Okay. How do you work with writers, with your clients, when do they pitch their ideas to you when they're writing specs before they start so that you can vet them?
Yeah, that's a big don't. After you're a client, that's a huge don't. Don't write something, then give it to me and you never told me anything about it. It's a terrible idea. It's the worst way to work with your manager. Best way to work with your manager is vet every idea by them, because we know the marketplace. You're not hearing no every day like we're hearing no. So you have no idea. You're just passionate about an idea. And by the way, we just had a conversation. You might still write it because you got to write it because you're just so passionate. That happens. That's happened countless times in my career. But writing it, getting into a habit of writing something, handing it to me as a manager and being like, now go sell it, I will probably respectfully and amicably fire you for doing that. Because this is a team. This is not a team if you're just like, go sell this monkey. Like that's,
Right. So when a writer, she pitches the idea to you, you like it, you start talking about it, they write it. Do you read several drafts over the period and give continual notes?
Many drafts. There's no rule to it. Sometimes it's a couple drafts. Sometimes probably certainly the most is in double digits somewhere where I read multiple drafts to get it. Because again, there's going to come a point a lot of times when you're going through a long development process that your manager still wants you to do more work, or your agent, your reps, and you're like, I'm out. I can't do it anymore. And then we have a real conversation about, do we think this is going to hurt you by going out in the marketplace? Do we think this is so busted that people are going to be like, uh-oh, what happened here? Maybe this person isn't as good of a writer as I thought they were. Because a lot of writers will fall into the mental trap of it's shots. It's like how many shots you get on goal. The more you miss, the less playing time you get in this business. So, you got to be cognizant of that. And you got to, put that as part of the conversation. And so sometimes there's just a strongly opposing ideas, and then maybe you don't work together anymore. Sometimes there's a happy medium where it's like, all right, do these couple notes, and then we'll try it because I think these are the major things, and then the rest we can let the market decide. Again, it's very subjective, and that's how you get into these debates. But if you have a good relationship with your clients, there's usually a way to figure it out. You can also do like a market test. You can send it to like a couple trusted companies that I'm close to, friends, and get real feedback who aren't gonna like ding you, on your reputation. But yeah, that's a huge don't.
And
Don't fall into that trap.
do you mind if the writers, in addition to getting notes from you, send it out to like beta readers they have to get their feedback?
I love it. Like I said earlier, writers are the hardest on other writers. Let a writers group beat it up. I'll probably end up doing less drafts with you.
Okay. And someone asked, is there a better day to query you?
Well, Monday through Friday. Right? Right. If you're talking about Monday through Friday, no. I work Monday through Friday regardless. There's no end to me.
If someone has placed well in contests, what advice do you have for them to then go ahead and use that to make the script and themselves more marketable, even if it's not just querying?
I mean, beyond querying, you should be networking however you can. That could be consults, that could be industry events if you live in LA or New York, or a hub of our industry. You should meet everybody. I don't know all these programs where you can meet people. It's like I don't say this like I don't mean to sound trite or whatever, but like people come to me because I'm a gatekeeper in this business, so I don't really I don't really know. I just know you should be communicating with other writers who, if they're established, great, they'll have a better network. But even aspiring, talk to your peers, talk to other people who placed in these contexts, hit them up on social media, just start building a network. Building a network is the most important thing that anybody in this business can do. No matter if you're a writer, director, executive, agent, manager, if you don't know people, you can't be successful in this business. So just start meeting people. And I know it's a numbers game, and I know it's like a crapshoot, but you never know who they go, oh, I just signed with somebody. Maybe I can send your stuff to my manager. You're never going to know that if you're not out there meeting people. So query letters is the only place where I can think personally where it's going to funnel to me directly.
Have you ever read sort of a script, you've not really liked it, but then you met the writer and you're like, the writer, you sort of clicked with the writer? No.
I won't be meeting if I don't like the script. I've taken favor meetings, but I tell the person right up top, this is not a signing meeting, because I don't want them having hurt feelings or misconceptions about what the context is.
Someone says, any specific advice you have on how you work, develop, or advise international writers? Like
what, to build them in an international space or build them in the US?
Both, if possible. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing. It's I don't want to be redundant, you know what I mean? But it's like, it's a different network of individuals, right? Like, but if you're an international writer, then there's a specific territory or country that you're from. So we need to make sure everybody there knows you. But then also we want to make sure that people in the US know you. So there's a trick to that, though, is like a lot of times local language writers don't write in English. So but if you're a writer who can write and you're multilingual, then we're building you in two different places. So it's like doing what you do in the US. But let's say you're like a Mexican-American writer, right? But you speak both languages and you can write in both at a high level. We'll try to build you a career in Mexico and a career in the US, because then you have more opportunities for for income, straight up, And you can also become, because like Mexico's a much smaller territory, right? So there's less people to know. There's less barrier for entry. You can build a very successful career there. And also they have there's local language where you would be writing in Spanish, but they also have Mexican writers who are writing in English for Mexico or writing for Spain, like mixed language that could be in either territory, right? Like Spanglish, what I would call growing up Spanglish.
Right.
That has tremendous value, right? Because most writers that are established in this business and why there's such a push for diversity look a certain way and speak probably just English, or certainly only write in it. So it all goes to the push for diversity and making sure you're not getting left behind as this business becomes more international. The trick for me is I can understand Spanish fairly well, and I can speak really terrible broken Spanish, but I'm not fluent, nowhere near fluent. So for me, there is also a barrier. I have to have colleagues or friends, peers, or connections who are bilingual, and that's that's on me to get better at Spanish. But I'm just saying, it becomes a barrier. But yeah, we're gonna do whatever it takes and find a way around that barrier to build you a business in both sides.
A couple of members brought up budget. Someone said, "Is there any future to writing a $30 to $60 million spec?"
Yeah, there is. Because again, remember at the beginning, the odds that you sell your first spec are not high. So again, I'm not looking for your first spec to sell. I already said this. You might be, and you're hoping everything you ever write sells, as you should. I hope for it, but I'm also a realist. I've been doing this a long time. It's probably not going to sell. It's happened. I've been fortunate, but let's just bet that it's not going to sell. So what are we doing then? We're trying to build your network. We're trying to have you meet a bunch of people. We're trying to have you become a name, have you be the new kid on the block, guy or gal who can write killer action at 30 to 60 or thriller or whatever it is, right? So that has tremendous amount of value. It's just we need to make sure your voice is coming through, and then it's a well-written script, which we'll do together, and then let the chips fall where they may. But yeah, look, I know why people are asking that, right? Because what's in the theater, right? It's giant stuff or small horror, or there's the middle class has kind of gotten pinched. But I would bet anything that in the next 10 years, the pendulum will swing a little bit. There will be some more shots on original ideas, because some of this IP, like The Flash, didn't do gangbusters, right? That's no offense to them. I haven't even seen it. I have no opinion on the quality. But I'm just saying, the common wisdom right now is giant IP. Well, that was a miss, right? And hopefully, again, I'm not joking. I root for all of them. So hopefully the rest of the summer, they're all hits. But let's be realistic, right? They're not all going to be hits. Even Marvel has seen a downturn, right? If you look at the last 4 or 5 Marvel, the new, whatever phase they're in, phase of million, they're starting to feel it too. So, and then what happens? Well, they pivot. And they go, oh, I got to try something else. And then that becomes the new it thing. And so, yes, write what you love. I'll say it a million times. Write what you love, because the trends will cycle back, and we'll find a happy medium between what's working in the industry and what you love, but don't chase trends.
Someone wants to know, what is a lit manager's duty, or what is your day like?
We touched on it earlier. It's meeting people. It's like coffees, lunches, dinners, drinks, regular meetings, talking to people on the phone, talking to clients, talking to agents, talking about what's the next move on a given project to either secure the job or to get the new draft in. It's there's a process to it, right? There's developing of the idea, or if you're going to book an existing job, right? Let's not forget that it's not just original content. Right. There are open writing assignments and features. There are staffing opportunities in TV. There are also OWAs in TV. They're not as prevalent as features, but there are. That somebody, Warner Brothers picked up a book, they want a writer. Great, I'm going to pitch you right? Then you get the job. Now there was a whole process. This involves a plan of action to get you the job. Now there's a whole process, plan of action to execute the script at the highest level. And then there's a whole process to helping try to get that thing made. So it's just, again, I could bore you with the specifics, but it's all about that.
Okay.
We don't read during the day. Again, any successful manager is not reading during the day, unless it's like a treatment, or maybe like you need to read the last 20 pages of something because you didn't have time to finish it the day before. But like, we're not sitting in our office for 3 hours reading. I don't know who does that in the representation game.
If you have a property that is both a book and a screenplay, which is better to pitch?
One doesn't preclude the other. I would say it's always good to have IP in this business, because when you're trying to sell IP, so the book, let's say you're trying to sell it to Warner Brothers or whatever, right? You would rather sell it to them and get you paid to adapt it, if they'll agree to that, than sell them both at the same time. You won't get as good of a deal. It'd be better to set up the book and then have you pay new money to write a screenplay. But if you have the screenplay, you're going to sign a contract that says there's no other material related to this concept that you have. So now you're going to have to sell them that screenplay, and I promise you won't get as good a deal. So IP is always going to be important in this business, because let's say they buy your book, they hire a writer X, doesn't go well, right? Most movies has multiple writers. We all know this, hopefully. So they're just going to go back to the book. But if you buy a spec and you rewrite it, doesn't work, and maybe they try another writer and it doesn't work, they're far less likely to go back to it. And there's some psychology to it, I'm sure, but they always feel like they're more comfortable going back to the book, or the comic or the article or whatever it is, the video game. I mean, how much money has been put into developing Tomb Raider into movies, right? Because there's IP there. If Tomb Raider had been an original spec and the first movie did well and then the second movie did less well, it's probably done as a franchise. But as a video game, they keep doing it, right?
That's true. When someone queries you, you want just a log line for one script, right? You don't want them to say, hey, I have 3 scripts here and here are the 3 log lines.
Yeah. So you're diluting your own product. It's why I don't call studio executives and pitch them 3 things at a time. Because they can't all be as good. Like to me, right? To you, they're all equally great. But like to me, I'm not going to read all 3. So now you're putting it on me to be like, 2 are all right and then 1's great. Try to figure it out. You know, that's kind of the mentality, because I don't have time to read 300 pages of a non-client. That's a lot. You're asking me, you're right. You're asking 4 or 5 hours of my time that could be spent on my clients.
Okay.
Look, here's what it is. Here's the psychology. It doesn't denote confidence. It denotes a lack of confidence.
Okay. And the same thing with when people are writing, even when your clients want to come up with, we talked earlier about how tough it is to sell original pilots. You know, is it, again, the original pilot is more used as a sample to staff someone somewhere?
It's both. You use it as both. You're trying to sell it, but you're also trying to get people to know your writer. So one doesn't preclude the other. I mean, I've had people get staffed and then later the script sells. You know, maybe their profile grew, or maybe they just got really close to an upper level on the show, whether it's a showrunner or one of the co-EPs or other EPs, and then they go, oh, whatever happened to that sample I read when I hired you? Oh, it's sitting on a shelf. All right, let me take another look at that, and then takes off, right?
Okay, cool. I think we've been here for almost an hour and a half. What advice do you have for emerging, aspiring writers, especially during this time with the strike and everything like that? Because a lot of people want to know, can they still query either managers, even if they're not WGA, or can they query non-signatory producers?
They can probably do both. Certainly managers. The non-signatory producers, you can still do it. Like the WGA, I just would be careful, because like, here's the thing. Say it works. Non-signatory picks up your project. What are they going to do with it? They're going to probably try to package it if they're going to do anything. Otherwise, they're waiting until the strike's over because they don't want any heat on them. So you might as well wait till the strike's over, right? Like it's a tricky time right now on like any since 07, 08, the last strike. But this one's even a little bit more, I think. And I think rightfully so. Like to fight the fight, they've put up much starker black and white do's and don'ts. The WGA, which I think is smart, because if you're really standing with your guild in solidarity, you're not looking for ways around it, right? And so I think they've kind of put that out there, like, you're either with us or you're not. If you're trying to find ways around it, then you're not with us, right? So, and I think that's smart from a negotiating union solidarity standpoint. So, yeah, look, I would still query people if you're not going to get in trouble for doing it, right? But game it out. What's the producer going to do? They're going to try to package it now. There's going to be a little, like, people are going to see that, and now it's time to go to buyers, and they could, but then if you set, query the producer, they package your project, now they're going to take it out to buyers. Now you sell something to Netflix. You're not WGA. You didn't break any rules. WGA knows you sold something to Netflix. Good luck getting in the union. So it just depends on what you're trying to do there, right? But again, if you're just looking to get fans and you're comfortable telling a producer who's interested, even a non-signatory, saying, hey, I don't want you to do anything other than like we can do notes right now, that's probably chill. And by the way, you can call the WGA and ask them, even if you're not a member, they'll tell you, or email them or whatever, they'll tell you what their opinion is. But yeah, that's what I've been doing, even for clients. I've been like, look, I don't want to give you the wrong advice. I'm not in the union. I'm not a strike captain. Call your strike captain, call the WGA. They have an open line. Just let's not leave anything to chance. But yeah, look, advice to wrap this up. I've touched on all these things. I give the same advice to anybody who's aspiring in this business, no matter what, whether you want to be an artist, a rep, executive, whatever it is. 3 things. Stand by your taste. What you like is what you like. Don't bullshit people. They'll see right through it. Don't pretend you know genre, because when you don't and you talk to somebody who's a real genre fanatic, they'll know you're faking it. Don't fake it. Just like what you like. Meet everybody. I'll get hit up constantly, and I of course have to be careful with my time, but I almost meet with everybody in this business. I'm saying people who are already in the business, right? Like CEs who are just in the business, brand new, just got off a desk as an assistant. Meet everybody, right? Again, you're in a different position. You're outside looking in, but still meet your peers. Some of those people are gonna get in. Meet everybody, and then don't quit. Sounds trite, right? But most of my peers who aren't in this business, it wasn't because they couldn't have kept doing it. They just quit, right? And I'm not saying quit like they're quitters, boo. No, they weren't committed to this life the way you have to be if you're going to make it in this business.
I do have one last question. Sorry. Excuse me. When you send, hey, kitty, aw. What's his name? Wasn't it?
That's Simon. Simon's always, it's all about Simon.
Yes, always. When you send clients out to meetings with execs or producers, what advice do you give on how to handle the meeting, whether it's a general meeting or whether it's
we prep you, right? So first of all, if you didn't go on IMDb and look at that person's credit or the company credits, you're already messing up. Like get on it, right? But we're also going to talk about it. I want to be like, okay, well, you're meeting with Monkey Paw, which is Jordan Peele's company, right? Okay, what do? They do horror. They do diverse stories. They do stories that have an underlying metaphor or theme that is told through a genre lens, but is actually saying something about the world we live in. Great. You know that. You can see that from Get Out. You can see that from Us. You can see, right? Like from Nope. But you also might not know, because we talked to them and they called us to say they wanted to meet with you, and we're constantly being like, all right, I want to send you this, I want to send that. And they go, actually, you wouldn't think of this for this, but we're looking for comedy. Or what? I'm just making it up, right? I don't think they are. I mean, they would do comedy, by the way, but they haven't specifically said to me they're looking for comedy. But as an example, then you wouldn't know that. You did your homework, and you should, and that's great. But we'll prep you. We'll say, okay, these are the ideas that you should talk about when the exec prompts you to talk about new ideas. Of course, at first it's gonna be like, where are you from? What brought you to write? All the get to know you stuff. But then when it comes to actual business, right? Every meeting is an opportunity, and you should have a agenda going into that. And again, as writers become more established, there's less and less prep they need. It becomes old hat. They just know how to do this in their sleep. But in the beginning, of course, we're going to make sure you don't look bad, because if you look bad, we look bad. So you're going to get prepped. I'm going to tell you what to talk about. We're going to build an agenda.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Taking time off on a Saturday morning, and I hope you feel better.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm starting to feel much better. It's just
right.
congestion.
Someone asked, is Simon wrapped?
Of course, he's my client. He's my client.
Yes. So thank you very much again. And I will post the winner of the contest soon. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.